We've arrived in a certain place by the story we're telling ourselves, and in some ways we feel we need to justify it, particularly if we don't feel like we're exactly where we had hoped to be at this stage of the game. Continuing down the path of exploration, an opportunity here is to listen to how you listen. Now, listening is a critical skill. You've learned that if you've gone through the earlier modules. But this one's really worth amplifying in terms of stories. If you deconstruct your listening, you ask yourself, what's the focus and the intention of my listening? What am I trying to achieve with my listening? Most of us don't spend time being intentional or asking ourselves in advance of an engagement, particularly if that engagement is with ourself, of what is it that we're listening for. So when you are involved in conversation, even if that conversation is just you by yourself, what's being said? What's being said when you talk to yourself? What kind of words are you using when you talk to others? What kind of words are you taking in from others? What are you listening for in others? So in the engagement, whether it's you to yourself or you to other people, really pay close attention to what you're defending in your language. If people could listen closely to you or you listen closely to yourself, you're probably defending something, as we all do. We've arrived in a certain place by the story we're telling ourselves, and in some ways we feel we need to justify it, particularly if we don't feel like we're exactly where we had hoped to be at this stage of the game. As you engage with other people, you'll also listen for the fact that they're going to defend their positions. What's vital in this journey of creating stories is not to argue for your position or against your position or for someone's position or against their position, just to listen. Seek to understand how it is their story or your story has led you to where you are, because the story can change. The story is a construct. We're the architect. You created it. I created it. We all created it. Let me give you an example. So all of us have been involved with some regularity in meetings, right? Many meetings, probably more meetings often than we prefer to have. Now, some of you have heard me describe this, but think about this today, or think about this tomorrow, or think about this through the course of your week. You know there's a meeting coming up, a specific meeting. Maybe that's a regular weekly meeting you have, or that's a bi-monthly meeting you have, and you know the individuals who are going to be part of that meeting. Going into it, there's either an agenda or an agenda that's understood in terms of topics that are going to be discussed. You know who the people are in the room. You could probably describe the interactions, what people are going to say, who's going to be listening, who's not going to be listening, who's going to be looking at their phone, who's going to be the dominant one, who's going to be the quiet one. You probably have a pretty good feel of the layout of the room. So essentially you have the meeting before the meeting. And then you go into the meeting and you're listening for all the things that you've described to yourself that are likely going to unfold in that meeting. And you're probably not going to be disappointed. The individuals are going to act exactly how you've written the script, because that script's been memorized by you and them. And if you listen closely, you'll get exactly what you came for. Coming out of that meeting, where the most important meeting has, where maybe the things that have to be said or unsaid are accomplished by a smaller group of people, you recognize that in those 3 meetings, it took you 3 meetings to have 1 meeting to get to the point you wanted to get to. So you got exactly what you're listening for. The key of that is to think of, how can I change the dynamic? That I listen for somebody in a different way? Are there words that I wouldn't have picked up before because I profiled them in a certain way? Can I change my story on how I see somebody? Can I change the type of question that I ask? Can I switch an answer that I might normally had? Am I open to being wrong about something? Is there something I feel like I have to defend that perhaps if I put my guard down, I might learn something? So what you listen for from yourself is going to show up in the theater of your life. It's going to show up by the characters you have written a script for, and we often get exactly what we script. You have the opportunity to change the script and change the story. It's worth practicing, because you can always go back to the way you were. I suspect once you realize the power you have to architect that future that you want to live into, you won't want to go back. I'm not saying it's easy. Hey, but if it was easy, word would have gotten around. Give it a try.